Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today I'm going to show you how a Tarkov raid changed the way that I think about the value of high tier equipment and why this is important for Tarkov's future plans. We had just finished a very successful labs raid, having extracted with 2 hex grids from raiders, and wanted to round out the session with a geared factory run using the Mark 47 Mutant from the previous raid. Dressing up as Tagilla for a bit of fun with his rig, helmet and cap, we headed into what would turn out to be a real banger, but it would also be the key to showing us something that is mostly missing from Tarkov right now. Spawning in Glass Corridor, we moved to the tunnels after hearing some shots in a slightly odd position and into our first encounter.
Oh, that sounds like far away.
After checking for other players, we ran straight into our cosplay model himself, Tagilla. Go away. Trading shots, neither of us secured a kill, but on returning, he was nowhere to be seen. Looting the PMCs though revealed a second Tagilla visor. Oh yeah, Tagilla face shield too. While finishing up, a lucky break enabled us to take him down while looting the remaining PMC. Yeah. Now here's where the raid got kind of unusual. In standard Tarkov, you're generally looking for maximum rubles per slot efficiency, and stacking as many items in as possible to your bags and rig to achieve this. However here, we had a situation where there was 3 class 5 helmets in the raid. Unlike almost any other item, you simply cannot buy class 5 protection at all, since the Altin and the Reese T barters were removed from the traders, making the Tagilla mask also incredibly valuable and arguably even priceless. The best that you can do is the masker with a class 6 visor but only 4 on the helmet and a tiny amount of vision along with it. At this point I was pretty beaten up, and the longer we stayed around the more likely we were to die and lose everything. Given other class 6 thorax only armor is purchasable from the traders, I decided to take our winnings and run, leaving the 0 Tagilla vest in raid rather than insurance frauding my own due to more nearby shots. The net result, we left the raid with 2 Tagilla helmets, one on my head and the other in my bag, and then my own helmet came back in insurance, boosting my stocks of class 5 helmets dramatically. Because of the total inability to purchase this kind of gear, the stakes in this raid were raised much higher than almost any other that I have played after the mid-game in this patch. Those of you who have watched my Fixing Tarkov video will know that I've been on a theory crafting kick recently for ways to improve the game, and the one important thing that I didn't cover in that video at all was regarding trader versus in-raid loot rebalancing. Something that was raised both in the feedback on that video as well as elsewhere in the community and by other creators is another factor which contributes towards the lack of game loop incentives and PvP dissatisfaction, which is that if you are at max traders, you can generally buy everything on your opponent's body when you get back to the stash. There are a few exceptions to this, and class 5 headwear is one of them, demonstrated in the raid that we just saw. But even if an item is found in raid only, such as the class 6 hex grid, given it is possible to buy other items of a similar quality, like the slick, this devalues the rarity of the ones that can't be purchased. This is why I think that the meta stuff, like the absolute best weapon attachments, the best guns, armor and ammo, should probably be found in raid more often, and reduced on the traders themselves. Those that call for the fleet to be removed without any other changes I believe are missing the point slightly, that you can make many meta builds and even full kits without touching the fleet at all, just by getting to level 4 traders. What this would also allow for is taking the trader gear from, let's say, levels 1 to 3 and stretching them out into the existing levels 1 to 4, i.e. taking the items currently on level 4 and placing them into raid instead. Clearly this is not a one-size-fits-all approach and would need to be tailored. Firstly, which items to move will depend on that exact item and where it needs to fit into the progression, and secondly, where these items get found in the raid is almost as important as whether they're on the traders or not. Currently, Altins are fine in raid only, but Tarkov right now is very limited in the choices that it gives to the player if they actually want to try and get hold of them actively. Basically, boss guard killing and passively farming stashes are the only ways, so this would need to be reworked as well. But I think this overall approach would make searching for and finding the best of the best a task in and of itself, rather than a product of grinding quests to max trader rep and then permanently having access to all of the best gear in the game. In my opinion, traders can still give you items as you level them up, but they should only allow you to make decent kits at max, not razor edge meta loadouts. This is the crux of Tarkov's endgame problem. Take a game like DayZ that I've been playing a little bit off stream. The game is extremely survival focused. Everything wears out, from guns and suppressors to the literal clothes that you wear on your body. If you're playing vanilla or vanilla-like servers, there's nowhere to buy any of this stuff either, so you have to go and get it. This makes the game loop pretty clear. The things that you have to do are usually the things you need to continue surviving, from the basics of replenishing supplies of food and water, or to increase the power of your loadout, but as these items are continuously degrading through use, there's a never-ending requirement to seek out more. Now, I'm not saying that Tarkov needs to be DayZ. These are totally different games in many ways with pros and cons on both sides, but we can learn some lessons about encouraging players to do certain things through how the game is designed. One interesting aspect of how these two differ can be thought of through the lens of roguelike games. Broadly speaking, a roguelike plays out such that each run begins at a similar level of progression, with the player becoming more experienced between each attempt. A roguelite, on the other hand, typically has progression for the in-game character between attempts, which makes them stronger outside of the actual player's skill. While vanilla DayZ acts like a roguelike for the most part, you load in, you try to survive, die and start over, Tarkov is very much roguelite in its design. The permanent milestones of trader levels, hideout progression and cases to increase stash space are retained between raids. And ultimately, because your PMC ratchets up through these eventually given enough time, this is the reason what do you do when you get to the endgame questions arise. Just for argument's sake, imagine in DayZ having the ability to fairly easily acquire some kind of currency and the ability to buy all the best gear without going into the dangerous military loot spots. Well, there wouldn't really be a game loop anymore, except for taking that bought gear out to shoot at other players, also with gear, probably still around the military spots, but this would be more by convention because neither of you actually need anything from the loot locations. People sometimes talk about money sinks as well, but that isn't a fully adequate answer on its own, because the situation is more about what do I need to do next, and in Tarkov it's honestly not very clear later on into the game. All of these elements about the progression are supposed to be overhauled by the time that we get to 1.0, and I do hope that some of these mechanics come in. I have fun working on my own game knowledge and skill and enjoy the combat for what it is, but for many, the actual game itself right now doesn't have any further goals to achieve. In effect, once you're at that stage in the current formulation of Tarkov, you've kind of won. So next up, go and check out my video with some ideas of how to fix Tarkov's dissatisfying PvP. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, hit all the buttons if you enjoyed the video, and as always, have fun in your raids.